I guess the quality of people that I found myself with, I started getting exposed to a level of knowledge and information that began to shape my mind as to the fact that there are certain levels of possibility that existed that I wasn't aware of at the time.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening once again, depending on where you're watching us from. And welcome once again to the Adventures podcast. As you know, on Adventures, we bring you the story of courage and vision behind the brands and the organizations that you see every day. And our hope is that as you listen to their stories, you'll be able to get some inspiration and ideas that will help you even travel and achieve success faster than some of the stories or some of the brands and organizations around you. So welcome once again. It's my big pleasure to have you here today. All right. Joining us today is a friend and a brother, and we kind of go way back. His name is Mr. Bolutife David, right? Bolutife David founder is the founder and the CEO of High Performance Consulting. He will tell us a little bit more about the outfit, but essentially they are into helping individuals and organizations develop at the highest level of productivity and performance possible. Essentially, they help organizations outperform. And today, he will be sharing with us the stories behind how he conceived, how he built, and how he's been able to, kind of sustain this business in the last couple of years. So joining me today is Mr. Bolutife David. Mr. Bolutife, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome on board.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. The pleasure is all mine, and I'm looking forward to the amazing conversations that we're going to be having as well.
Brilliant. Once again, thank you. Like I said, I'll keep thanking you because we're excited about having you around. Now, we normally like to start by requesting that you share a little bit, and as I used to say jokingly, that you share a little bit about the organization that you run, what you do, possibly the scope of your operation, the scope of your operations, and all of that. I say you take it as your unpaid advert, right? So please, can you please start by telling our viewers a little bit
Okay.
about the organizations that you lead, what you do, how you help organizations and individuals, and possibly a little bit about the scale of your operations.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Kil, for the opportunity to be here. I really, really love to be here. And I think it's an amazing thing that you're also doing, trying to create inspiration for a lot of people. Because the truth of the matter is that without inspiration, we can be so lost. I don't think I can also tell my own story, without talking about, the dose of inspirations I've gotten at different times, along the journey, because the only way we dare to dream is because we can see other people's dreams come alive. So I think, this podcast goes a long way in creating the springboard for a lot of people to also, pathfind, into other people's stories. So yeah, I think it's a very good thing that we're doing here. And that is why I am super excited to be here. Okay, so to give like a background or a little introduction into what high performance consulting does, so high performance consulting, started out as a training outfit, but again, that wasn't what I wanted to create out of high performance consulting. My vision, my goal is to be able to create, an indigenous consulting firm that will ultimately compete with the big four, right? Especially within the African turf, right? So that is what was in my mind. That has been what is in my mind. That is what is still on my mind, and that's what we're trying to create. But whilst we are dreaming and aspiring to create the one of the biggest consulting firms in Africa, how far have we come relative to our operations? Maybe I can first speak into our services. So, on the one part, we do business consultancy, uh, end to end. So it is not just training, it's not just HR. We handle the financial bit. We handle, if you're trying to do digital transformation within your company, if you're trying to conduct surveys, to be able to test your customers to see how you can, improve the quality of your offering, all of those things comes into our consultancy services. If you're trying to come up with either your 5-year strategy, create your strategic objectives, knock it into departmentals, create your performance scorecard, all of those things comes within what we do in consulting. Then the other part of it is that we also offer, HR support services to organizations. So there are some organizations that by themselves, they don't have what it takes to, to offtake their own HR function. So get to outsource the HR function to us. So from recruitment to performance management design to design of key result areas, to managing productivity, everything that comes into HR to payroll management to, pensions management, all of those kind of things comes into, what we do in our HR support. Then we also offer executive coaching. And the reason is because we recognize that, one of the things that would really help people to really scale is the ability of somebody that is not boggled down in the everyday running of that business to be able to help them visualize into what they can really produce and begin to handhold, the senior managers of the organization, to be able to bet something that is beyond what they can even imagine. So we do executive coaching, right? And then on the other side, we also do trainings. So when it comes trainings, we focus on both soft skills and technical skills. So on the side of the soft skills, we're looking at what are those things that if everybody should gain mastery around, it will help them to become the best version of themselves and then produce it ultimately. The reason why we focus a lot on training is because for us, we've come to realize that you cannot become better at what you do if you don't become better at who you are. So, in terms of our training, we are helping people to become better at who they are so that they can use better results in the organization that they work in. So, on one side, we focus on soft skills. On the other side, we focus on technical skills, depending on the need of our clients, but for us, before we even launch any training intervention, we're always asking the question, is there a gap analysis? Have you done any that will let us exactly, what skill is in there? Because, you can be teaching the same thing to different set of people and the way you deploy it will be totally different. So that is, that is what we do essentially. So these are the four major, service areas that we have. And for us to be able to meet the needs of our clients, we have a plethora of people we work with, either as a full-time in-house consultant, as associate consultant, as ad hoc staff, just to be able to ensure that every project that is given to us to manage by our clients, we're able to deliver on it excellently. So that is a summary of what our service looks like in terms of reach. Within the few years.
Hang on a sec. Before you go into Rich, right? I
Okay.
just changed my mind. This is not going to be unpaid adverts, right? This is going to be very paid, right? I'm going to send I'm going to send you invoice afterwards, right? Sorry, that's just on a lighter note. So please go ahead and tell us about the Rich. Thank you.
Yes. Talking about the reach of the firm, right? Like I was saying, it would interest you to know that, or maybe on one side, this is the second shot. So high performance consulting is my second shot at consulting, right? I started with a company I called Proquitas Reserves. But I had to shut that down. Maybe why I shut down will come up in the course of the conversation.
That
right?
sounds complicated. The name itself sounds complicated.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to talk about that in the course of the conversation because I had to do that for some strategic reasons, right? Um, yeah, so I'll get to that as the goes on. But high performance consulting, as we have it today, was officially started in 2019, and between now then and now, we've had the privilege of consulting for about 37 organizations, right? We've trained almost 10,000 working professionals, right? And I have had the opportunity of working, with, C-suite executives, one-on-one coaching. I've worked with about 28, C-suite executives. And out of those 28, about 10 of them were the CEOs of those organizations. And these are not organizations that are doing um, tens of millions. There are organizations that are doing hundreds of millions and even billions. So we've had our fair share of growth within that time, and now, I know we can say that we're grateful for how far we've come within, well, what I like to call a very short period of time.
Wow. 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 I mean, just hearing your stories alone about the scope and the reach and, the impact, it's quite inspiring, right? And, I don't want to let so much out, but I can say that, that I think I kind of have an idea of the humble beginnings when you started out and like that. But, so to hear that, in how many years?
That's 2019 till date. That's about 6 years or thereabout. 5, 6
Wow.
years, yeah.
Wow. In 6 years, I mean, more than 30 organizations, more than 10,000 people trained and consulting for, you know, C-suite kind of executives, right? For me, it's big. It's big. So, happy that, things have really worked out well so far. But if you can go back a little bit memory lane and tell us, how did it all start? Right? What were the things that led to you deciding that, okay, it's not 9 to 5 I want to do, or I want to consult? How did you kind of get to that point?
Okay. Thank you so much for that question. The truth of the matter is that I never knew that anything like management consulting existed for a very long time in my um I did have the privilege of growing up in a privileged environment, right? I in Kwara State. And I didn't grow up in a Lorry in Kwara State. I grew up in one of those remote, villages, so to speak, or towns in Kwara State. Right. But fortunately or fortunately, I guess Providence, led me to Olabisi Obajo University, where I began to actually discover myself. Before that time, I used to be a perfect introverted person suffering from a very high level of low self-esteem, right?
Mm.
Um, if you
High
remember,
level of low self-esteem.
if
That's
you
quite
had
a
invited
thing.
me for a conversation like this, I will bail out on you for sure, right?
Yeah.
But when I go to to the university, I don't know exactly what happened, but I guess the quality of people that I found myself with, you know, I started getting exposed to a level of knowledge and information that began to shape my mind as to the fact that there are certain levels of possibility that existed that I wasn't aware of at the time, And one of the earliest information that I was exposed to was the concept of purpose. If it's okay to mention, and one of the people that I heard that from at the earliest stage was the very person that is interviewing me right now.
Well, thanks for the clap back.
I remember when I was in 100 level, I attended, one of the services where you were preaching, right? And there is a message you preach that I can never forget. You spoke about the fact that there are three types of Christian. There is the 12 o'clock Christian, there is the 6:30 Christian, and there is the 6 o'clock Christian. I don't know if you remember, right? And and the idea is, the goal is to be a 6 o'clock Christian that is heavily conscious and utterly useful. The bigger hand is pointing upwards, and the smaller hand is to the heart. And in the midst of all of that, I began to think, okay, what does that really mean? Right. And then that led me to the journey of, living a purposeful life. And fortunately, we had a lot of seminars, a lot of conferences, in Olufemi University at the time. We had the likes of Fela Drotoye, Nia Desoya, Kunle, of them just coming around, doing different trainings, seminars, and conferences, and it began to occur to me that, okay, maybe there's really more to this life, right? I remember, when I was in 200 level, I bought my very first book myself, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That book changed my life. I read it. I must have read that book like 8 times, right? Back and back to back and back to back and back, and I began to live the habit. Now, it wasn't because I knew exactly what I was trying to do, but I just knew that, trying to create a different reality for myself, different from where I was coming from, and the more resolute I became about it, the more I took the step one after the other. Then I think I was in part 3 at the time, when, an older friend of mine who happened to be, a pastor as well, was going to organize. This older friend of mine, I think was in his final year, was in part 3. He was going to organize, a seminar. And, he had done the seminar actually, right? I didn't attend the seminar. And then I think on this particular day, I went to the business center to do some photocopies. Then I met him at the photocopy center. I was trying to do some form of certificates for the people that had attended the seminar, right? And guess what? What he wanted to do was a big deal, was a challenge for all of the people that were working at the business center at the time. And I walked up to him. I'd seen him around. I have attended programs where he was speaking as well, right? So I walked up to him. I was like, by the way, this person I'm talking about is Pastor Damola, right?
Okay. I figured.
So I was in the business center, and what he wanted to do, the people there couldn't do it. Now, before I came to Olufemi University, I worked on my mom's business center. That was how I learned how to use a computer, right? So all that they were trying to do, and I'm like, what are you doing that is a big deal? So I walked up to him and I said to him that, do you mind if I help you solve this problem? I was like, you can solve it. I said, yes. I said, just leave all of these things with me. Go. When I'm done solving the problem, I'm going to call you. I think maybe 1 hours later, I called him that I'd sorted it, all the things that he needed, I'd produced it, and it was ready. Now, and when he came to me, he was like, Bolu, you are such an extra miler. I can never forget that statement. Right. At that time, I've never heard of that word before. So I was like, okay, what does it mean to be an extra? Because in my mind, I just did something very simple and easy, right? And, a couple of months later, he was going to organize this big seminar in Agowe. And he was like, would you mind working with me on this project? And we worked together, and that was it. This was the days where he was trying to start ISMN, that's the Strategic Management Program in Olufemi University, right? And, we did the conference, and it was super successful. And then after that, he said he was going to register a management consulting firm. I was like, what does he mean? And he explained it the best way he knew how to. I was like, I said, why not? Remember that at that time, I was just experimenting with a lot of things. I learned at that time that one of the ways to really know what your life can be about was for you to give yourself to a lot of things, right? And then giving yourself to a lot of things, you begin to see it's in you, right? At that time, I was studying I was studying law, by the way. So I started working with him. We started organizing, the certification program for Institute of Strategic Management Nigeria, and it was
So
just moving.
by the way, Bolu, story 1 minute. Have you ever practiced law?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, for a short period, right?
Yes, I did for
Oh,
about 3 years.
okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So along the line, it will probably come up in the story as
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, go on, go on,
because
go on. Enjoying the
because
story.
because everything is just connected. So, so when we started that is of strategic management, program in Ogun State, it was a big deal. It was just successful, 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 successful. It was, yeah, and I was like, if this is what they call management consulting, it's sweet though, you know. So that was the earliest, you know, um, experience I had with management consultancy, and with the benefit of hindsight, I began to understand that the truth of the matter is that you cannot desire what you have not tasted, right? So for me, that season was a season of tasting it so that it well up a desire in me that would birth what I have today. So, for example, if I didn't go to the business center that day, I would not have met him. If I did not meet him, I wouldn't have done that work for him. He wouldn't have thought of me as a miler. He would not have asked me to come and collaborate with him on his projects. And probably I'm not going to be doing this today. So there is no way I can talk about the story of my, consultancy journey without from that point. So that's the earliest, exposure I had to the concept of, you know, I'm running a management consultancy business, and that's what has
Mm.
brought up. Yeah.
I mean, thanks a lot for sharing all that you've shared. Well, that's is inspiring hearing those stories, right? But three things jumped out as you were sharing the story that I want to double click with you. Uh, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because yes, you could have gone to the business center, but might have chosen not to offer that
Yeah.
service, right? It wasn't that you're going to get paid for it anyway. You were just willing to help, right? So for me, it looks like on one hand, you are intentional about people. It looks like you're intentional about service. It looks like you're intentional about knowledge, right? Will that be accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
The truth of the matter is that, again, with the benefit of hindsight,
Yeah.
right? One of the ways to come into your own is through service, right?
Mm.
If you are faithful in small, you'll be giving the big, something like that.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
right in my life today, there are a lot of people I'm still serving, right? Because I know that
Wow.
the more I serve, the more opportunities I'm exposed to, along my own life's journey. And, like I said, you know, I am not the kind of person that learns something and don't try to practice it. In fact, I say something like this, that I don't like learning too much,
Mm.
because I like to be in that space where I'm thinking that I am learning more than I'm using, right?
Wow.
To
Wow.
be able to
Wow.
let little, then maximize the living day out of that thing, then
Little.
I go
Mm.
learn something else. Which is why I said that the 7 habits of highly effective people was a
Yeah.
book I read 8 times over
Wow.
an extended period of time. I did
Mm.
not read anything else. I just wanted to be sure that everything I'm learning from this book, I am
Bringing it to
converting to
life.
my daily
Wow.
reality.
Wow.
So that was what spurred me, you know, being able to have that conversation with him in that business center. Because
Mm.
certain things, if you ask me today that what were the first lessons I learned from that book, I'm going to tell you, because those things, in fact, like I always say to people, right? All the junctions where I learned the things that transform my life, I can tell you about them.
Mm.
That's why
Mm.
I could remember listening to a message you preached
Yeah.
in 2002 or 2001 because it was a defining moment for me.
By the way, I've not sent you the invoice for that consulting that I offered to you.
At that
So,
point, we were doing the work of God.
still doing the work of God.
And so you praising people for a very long time. So, and that's why we are doing adventures now as well. So,
I mean, interesting stories to hear, Bolu. I hope that we'll have enough time to go through all of these because, if I want to unpack all of these, that there is a lot there, right? I think at times the mistakes that we make as a human is to think that yesterday is gone, right, and then tomorrow is. But the truth of the matter is, today is a build up of or today is a build up of what is going to happen tomorrow, and we need to kind of take every day as an opportunity to build into something bigger. Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and please see you on the next episode.